Welcome to this special podcast series sponsored by 6clicks, Series Spotlight, Revolutionizing GRC with 6clicks. Over the next 5 episodes, I visit with Joe Schorr, Vice President of Global Channel Sales, Andrew Robinson, Co-founder and Chief Information Security Officer, Stephen Walter, Head of Marketing, Dr. Heather Bucher, Chief Technology Officer, and Ant Stevens, Co-founder and Chief Executive Officer. Over this series, we will break down the 6clicks hub and spoke approach, utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning in governance, risk, and compliance, curating and maintaining a robust GRC content, producing audit-ready reports, and look at what is next for 6clicks down the road. And now a word about 6clicks. 6clicks is your complete operating system for risk and compliance. The perfect interplay of content and functionality. Implement any risk and compliance program supercharged with the world's first AI engine for GRC practitioners. No matter the size of your company or the depth of project given to your advisory. White labeled, automated, fast, clear, and agile GRC. That's 6clicks. In this part 1, I'm joined by Joe Schorr, Vice President of Global Channel Sales, and we break down the 6clicks hub and spoke approach. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. Welcome to episode 1 of our 5-part series. Today, we'll be taking up managing a multi-entity GRC architecture with 6clicks hub and spoke. I'm joined today by Joe Schorr. Joe is the Vice President of Global Channel Sales at 6clicks. So, Joe, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Tom, thanks a million.
Could you tell us what your day-to-day role is at 6clicks?
Sure. So I'm in charge of, as it says, global channels, which encompasses service provider partners and technology partners and what people think of as a traditional channel resale role. It's kind of funny. I'm an odd duck to a degree in that, I'm working for a high-tech software company, but 99% of my background is in the consulting field going back 30-some years. So I've done a ton of security and risk consulting over the years. And all of that work kind of drove me to the point that I'm at now, where I was always sort of looking for that holy grail solution to help me out in what I do for a living. And the things that are being done at 6clicks fit right in with what we were trying to do for years manually and on paper and everything else.
Well, Joe, I was intrigued by the name Hub and Spoke, and I thought that was a great way to name the tool. And I understand that 6clicks had a multi-tenant or a federated model. Could you tell us the evolution to Hub and Spoke, and really what's the difference and what does it mean?
It's funny, if you say federated, or even if you say multi-tenant, it kind of makes sense to a lot of the people that we were originally working with, which was managed security providers and managed services providers. So in reality, it's kind of a geekier term. Like people like me get what a federated model is, with whether it's databases or application development or whatever you might have. In reality, the U.S. is a federal model. There's a big national government, and then there's states that all, you can report up into it. A lot of companies are organized that way, a lot of organizations. In reality, what it really is, and the easiest way to communicate is, it is a hub and spoke model. Just like with airline travel, back in the old days of networking, we had hubs and routers and switches and the computers all hooked to a hub. This is very much almost the same exact thing. In our model, we're using what we call a center of excellence, which can be that, think of it as the headquarters, or think of it as the hub or the terminal in an airport. And then you have the different wings go out to the different entities. And you can pull different types of data and analytics and things from those entities or those spokes are out there, bring them back into the center of excellence. And then the center of excellence, by the same token, can have a lot of centralized benefits like templates and control sets and things. And they're able to push that out at the same time to all these different entities. So it truly is, if you draw it up on a napkin, it looks like a hub and spoke the way that we're doing it. Whether you call it federated, hub and spoke, or whatever it is, it's really the kind of the holy grail of what people have been looking for a long time, in being able to control from a central location some stuff that's really, really complex and things that require a ton of data flowing both ways.
Joe, that's a lot about the what, but let me focus on the why. And if I could maybe expand on that, I think really everyone understands this is about risk, management of risk. Risk is not bad, and it's how you manage that risk. Maybe you could explain why this is so powerful, but really on the management of risk.
It's tough. A lot of what we're seeing in the news, the kind of high profile stories and the vulnerabilities and the threats and the different massive attacks that are happening, a lot of press is given to threats and really not a lot of press, and really not probably the parallel effort isn't being given to the risk community at large. A lot of what we're trying to do, people like me, that we're bridging both worlds, the cybersecurity world and the risk management world. We were cobbling together tools for years using spreadsheets, some of the legacy GRC tools that were out there. My son is a power lineman. And if you ever look at linemen's tools, a lot of them have like a hammering surface on them. So these folks go up in a pole, and if they have to hammer something, they're using their wrench or the back of a screwdriver. It's not the best way to do things, but they literally they don't have a third hand to go reach for that hammer when they just need to, whack a staple in. That's kind of how risk professionals have felt for a very long time. It's a combination of having to fight with one hand tied behind your back, or just having to, go to war with the wrong tools at your disposal. So once we graduated from spreadsheets and at least we got into some GRC tools being developed, that was great. But the problem was that they were very much a standalone function. They were pretty much just spreadsheets that were translated into software or presented differently with a kind of a two-dimensional dashboard. They didn't take into account the way that businesses are really arranged. So as an example, the past few years, I did a lot of work with public equity firms. So they've got, anywhere from a dozen to 200 portfolio companies under the control. So if a PE firm wants to control, their risk posture, and they come up with, they engage in outside companies, spend a couple $1 million to create a kind of a bulletproof risk framework that they're going to follow. They need to be able to push that out to 200 different companies who are very, very different. They're operating in different segments, different industries. They're bigger, they're smaller, they're all over the map. So to do that, you need to have something that truly is like what we're talking about, a hub and spoke model, the ability to pull, a lot of different disparate data up into a central location, and at the same time be able to push back down to those disparate entities some kind of unified methodology, unified frameworks, and unified controls. That's always been a really tough thing to do. And if you imagine trying to do that on spreadsheets, it's almost impossible. I've done it. And that's what led me down the road to eventually working for 6clicks, is that we were always trying to figure out a better way to do this. And it was tough. This is what we're looking for. It's not just replacing the spreadsheets. It's replacing them, doing it in the same fashion, being able to pull in a bunch of different controls and compliance mandates, which are constantly being updated. All this manual work that we had to do got in the way of actually being able to do the risk work. So now you have the ability to free your risk people up to actually do the risk work instead of having to worry about the tool itself or the tools.
Let me see if I can follow up on a couple of those points and really thinking through the hub and spoke model. So at the end of the spoke, and we'll just follow with your example of a private equity firm with multiple portfolio companies, not unusual at all, sometimes in the same industry, but sometimes not. So you have a wide variety of data, disparate sources of data that you have to pull in. And first of all, the disparate data has to be collected, but then the data has to be collated in a way that can be utilized by the private equity firm, the corporate office, whatever the hub might be. Yet there are more stakeholders, and those subsidiaries or portfolio companies at the end of the spoke will need that data to make tactical, if not strategic, decisions and choices, so that there has to be differentiation back. Now, if I could overlay, you're going to have to report to senior management. You're going to have to report to the board of directors, all in a changing regulatory environment. It seems to me that this is an incredibly powerful way to collect and utilize data. Did I kind of describe it generally fairly within the context of the hub and spoke model?
Yeah, and not just with the hub and spoke model. You literally described what a risk consulting engagement would look like. This is real life, has happened. If you're hired to do a risk assessment against those 200 portfolio companies, exactly what you described is what happens. You've got a massive set of risk data and all kinds of different things you've collected. You have interviews, you've done vulnerability scanning, you've done risk assessments, third-party risk assessments, vendor assessments, everything you could possibly imagine. So that's all rolled up, collected somewhere, and a bunch of smart people look at it, and they're all trying to grade it, do things manually, and push it around. And at the end of the day, just like you said, and this is really important, you do have to report on it. So you have to have that kind of board level report and sort of the C-suite report. Then you have what I always called that director or functional management report in the middle. They're the ones that really have to read this, decipher it, and get it pushed out wherever. And then there's that bottom layer report that really needs to go out. It's almost a raw data level report that goes out to the people in the field or the people at those portfolio companies who are responsible for having to, quote, fix things. So you have this risk assessment says you've got these 10 things wrong. These 3 are critical. Fix them right now. Well, getting that down to the proper people, getting it tracked, and all that remediation, making sure that the remediation gets done. Again, back in the day, it was all spreadsheets, and it was, you'd have a wall like this next to me be covered with shower board, and people would be marking up walls for months at a time trying to file these projects. What you just said is what we're trying to accomplish right now with this hub and spoke model and the methodology. It sort of makes all that, again, it makes all that a much more trivial and mundane matter. You're not worrying about how you're going to do the project or what kind of tools you're going to use. You actually are worrying about the risk data itself and the business problems and all the things you should be worrying about. It takes one enormous headache out of the equation.
It strikes me that the hub and spoke model really allows you to have I don't want to say basic conversation, but a conversation that a wide variety of people can understand. I mean, I'm a lawyer and I understood it, but you're going to have non-technical folks at the C-suite or executive level, and certainly in the board level and everywhere in between. And it strikes me that you can explain sort of everyone's role in that process. And then the technical people who need to do the technical things can pull that data and do that as well. Would that also be a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's kind of the beauty of it, because you can craft it. There's sort of two sides of the coin. You can control who has access to what kind of data within, you're collecting a lot of really sensitive stuff. Not everybody in portfolio company 131 needs to see what's going on in portfolio company number 75. So, you need to segregate all that data, and you have to have access control over who can see what. But then by the same token, you need to make there enough of a degree of freedom that you can utilize the information you want to. So all that access control that's built into it is really important too. Because like you said, you've got board level people who in theory, and they may say they want to see everything, but they don't really want to see the raw data. But they may not be the right people to see everything that's going on. It might be that middle layer where they've got to be able to see how things get reported to the board and how things are being remediated down in the weeds. They get the most access control over all the data. Again, in the past, you couldn't really do that. And you sure as heck couldn't do it with a couple hundred companies worth. Or, if you're a burger franchise and you've got tens of thousands of stores around the world, owned by thousands of franchisees, you couldn't do it manually without, no matter how big those systems were. The fact that they really weren't multi-tenant or federated or followed a hub and spoke methodology, it made it almost impossible. You had to have hundreds and thousands of instances of these pieces of data built out.
So, Joe, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time, but I hope our listeners will join us tomorrow for our next episode, where I'm joined by Andrew Robinson, co-founder and CISO at 6clicks, where we take up utilizing machine learning and AI in your GRC practice. Joe, thanks again. I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be with you.
This is Tom Fox. Thanks again for listening to my series on 6clicks, who is revolutionizing GRC. You can find out more about 6clicks by checking out their website, www.6, that's the number 6clicks.com. I've also linked to it in the show notes. I hope you will join me for the rest of this series, as I know you will learn a lot about how 6clicks is truly revolutionizing the GRC and risk and compliance space. This special podcast series, Revolutionizing GRC with 6clicks, is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.